Yeah, I have it up there.
Of it.
Director Baez, I believe we're ready to start.
Okay. The meeting of the Committee on Student Achievement and School Innovation of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Director O'Halloran.
Present.
Director Peterson.
Present.
Director Phillips.
Present.
Director Simpson.
Present.
Chair Baez, we have Director Woodward also joining the meeting, but to call the roll, Chair Baez.
Present.
We have 5 present on the committee and Director Woodward.
Thank you. At this time, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our listening audience.
Para escuchar la Junta el día de hoy, por favor, llamar al teléfono 312-626-6799 y marcar 926-5677-5150. Una vez más, para escuchar la Junta, vamos a llamar al 312-626-6799 y marcar 926-5677-5150. Gracias.
At this time, I ask board members to please put your device on mute and remain muted unless you're speaking. This will help us to reduce digital interference and will help our board clerk and the listening audience keep track of who is speaking. Members, if you wish to speak, please put up your hand or use the raise hand feature on the platform. If I am unclear on the speaking order, I will ask the secretary to read the speaking queue based on the order indicated by the virtual platform that we're using. With that, as stated in the public notice of this meeting, the state of Wisconsin's Safer at Home order was in place at the time this meeting was noticed, which is why we're conducting the meeting virtually. Therefore, I will entertain a motion to waive paragraphs 3A, 5D, and any other portions of Board Rule 1.06, which may restrict or prevent the board from convening a remote or virtual meeting under the present emergency circumstances in order to allow members of the board to participate remotely without a quorum of the board being physically present at the Central Services Building. May I have a motion, please?
I so move.
Is there any discussion of this motion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Peterson's motion to waive all applicable sections of Board Rule 1.06 in order for the committee to meet remotely or virtually without a quorum physically present in the Central Services Building. Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Peterson.
Aye.
Director Phillips.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Chair Baez.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes. The motion passes.
Before we move on, I would like to remind the listening audience that in order to allow us much public participation as possible, in addition to our normal practice of broadcasting our meetings on radio station WYMS 88.9 FM and then live streaming them on the MPS website, we are broadcasting this meeting on the MPS YouTube stream, the link to which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. I want to thank the public for his understanding and for his willingness to continue to participate in the governance of this schools under these unusual circumstances. The chair will now ask the secretary to lead us in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. I remind members of the committee to please keep your devices muted to avoid interference. Okay. Secretary.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now proceed with the items on tonight's agenda. For our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting esb.milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Madam Secretary, what is the first item of business?
Item 1 is action on a request to end the educational program of the non-instrumentality charter school with Seeds of Health, Inc. for the Milwaukee Community Cyber High School, MC², as requested to be effective on the last regularly scheduled day of the 2019-20 school year. The recommendation is that the board approve the request as outlined in the introduction.
Does the administration wish to make any comments?
Bias and members of the committee, Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. At this time, we're requesting, at the request of the Seeds of Health, the item that before your acceptance to allowance of the expiration of the non-instrumentality charter school contract with Milwaukee Community Cyber High School at the close of the 2019-20 school year, and we are happy to respond to any questions that you may have in regards to this item.
Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? I hear no members of the committee wish to make questions. Does the Office of Accountability and Efficiency need to make any comments?
Chair Baez, Matt Chase, and OAE, we have no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, have we received public comment on this item?
Mr. Chair, we have no public testimony on this item.
What is the pleasure of the committee with respect to the item? Can I have a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
before the motion, Director Peterson is raising his hand to be recognized.
Director Peterson?
I actually was raising my hand to make a motion. If that's okay with the chair, I'll make a motion to approve the administration's recommendation.
Is there any discussion about the motion? May I say something before we proceed? Okay. I do believe that in this particular case, we have an indication of what I believe happens when we have the kind of discussion we had before about this particular non-instrumentality charter. And we continue to have the need to have, as soon as possible, the discussion that we had talked about before regarding charter schools and how we handle the matter of charter schools in this district, because every time we lose a charter like we did this particular time, we're also losing student count. And that continues to be an issue in this particular district, given its budgetary situation. So if there's no other discussion, will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Peterson's motion to approve the administration's recommendation to end the educational program of the non-instrumentality charter school contract with Seeds of Health, Inc. for the Milwaukee Community Cyber High School, MC², as requested, to be effective on the last regularly scheduled day of the 2019-20 school year. Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Peterson.
Aye.
Director Phillips.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Chair Baez.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 2 is action on a request to approve the non-instrumentality charter school contract with the Milwaukee Teachers Education Center, MTech, for the Milwaukee Environmental Sciences Academy to begin with the 2020-21 school year. The recommendation is that the board approve the attached non-instrumentality charter school contract with MESA to begin with the 2020 school year and end on the last regularly scheduled day of the 2021-22 school year.
Does the administration wish to make any comments?
Yes, Chair Bias and members of the committee, Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. We're seeking your approval for a 2-year contract with MTech for the Milwaukee Environmental Science Academy. For that is before you, and thank you. And we have if you have any questions regarding this item, we are happy to answer. Thank you.
Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask questions? Seeing none. Does the Office of
Mr. Chair,
Yes, we do.
you have both Directors Simpson and O'Halloran in the queue to speak.
Okay.
And I would also, Mr. Chair, I would also like to offer the committee information that this contract is in alignment with what the board had recommended, and it has been reviewed by the City Attorney's Office in consultation with the Office of Board Governance and the administration.
In what order, please? Do we call directors?
First, you would have Director Simpson and then Director O'Halloran.
Director Simpson, you're on.
Thank you. So I had a question regarding the disciplinary guideline. It looks like we were, sorry. I'm getting some odd feedback. I don't know if anybody else is. I'd hate to keep talking if the listening audience is getting weird. We're good? Okay. So I just had a question about the changes in the disciplinary guidelines. It looks like that paragraph was taken out regarding following the MPS student and parent handbook, and just wondering why that change happened.
Administration, do you have any comments on that?
Chair Baez, members of the committee, Bridget Shaw, Contracted School Services. So the charter school contract lends itself to choose option 1, where they follow MPS guidelines, or option 2, where they follow use their own disciplinary guidelines, as long as it aligns to the statutory requirements. Currently, MESA uses their own disciplinary guidelines, and so this is not a change to what they've already had in their contract. It's just attached to this item as part of the red line of the model contract.
Director Simpson.
Just to follow up to that. I'm getting that feedback again. It's okay, better. And then are we notified? I'm sorry if I have for my lack of clarity. There were just quite a few changes in this document compared to the original document that we had discussed at the board meeting when this first came to us. So just trying to get some clarity. So with the discipline guidebook that is adopted, if there are changes during the year, do we see those prior to changes happening?
Chair Baez, members of the committee, Bridget Shaw, Contracted School Services. That is correct. Any time that there is a change, we don't see a change after the board approves the contract. But know that the disciplinary, that they still follow the MPS expulsion process. So it happens at central services, as a traditional non-chartered school would have. That the disciplinary procedures as outlined in their handbook is unique to their educational program through their expeditionary learning.
Okay, thank you.
Director O'Halloran.
There we go. Thank you. I'm getting feedback. Good. Okay. So when we're looking at the red line, I just want to be clear. This is, I guess I was reading the red line as these are changes that were made after we already approved a different version. Am I interpreting that incorrectly?
Administration, will you please respond to that?
Chair Bias, members of the committee, Bridget Shaw, Contracted School Services. This is the last step of the charter school process. So what you had received before was a recommendation for renewal. So that was step one. Step two is providing with a contract that's negotiated between with the Office of Board Governance, the Office of the City Attorney, and administration, as well as school representation, to come to you with a contract, and that's what this is. So this is the final step, and then we take this contract once it's approved and have it signed and sent to DPI.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You have Director Person in the queue after Director Halloran.
Yes. Director Halloran, any follow-up?
I will take it back, and I appreciate administration's clarification on this issue. I am new to this committee. This is my first time sitting in on these charter discussions, and so I appreciate that clarification about the process and helping me understand precisely what we're approving tonight.
Director Peterson.
Thank you, and thank you, administration, for providing the red line. It really provides transparency in what we're all trying to do here. I have a couple questions myself on page, I believe it's page 11. What used to be said about changes in annual budget, it says it used to say something about mutually agree upon any expenditure that deviates from 10% or more in any budget category.
No, I can do it, but he's playing.
And now
Eric's trying to get up.
I hear somebody.
Specifically.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. That is our tech team. One moment.
Okay, now it reads that not that that, let's see, now it was mutually agree upon was crossed out, and it's provide notice to MPS. I'll probably have a follow-up question, but if I could hear the rationale for that change, I'd like to hear it.
Administration, would you please? Would the administration please respond to that question?
Go ahead.
Chair Bias, members of the committee, Bridget Shaw, Contracted School Services. So the changes that you see that are outlined here with the red line are ones that we've had vetted with various departments, as well as those that meet statutory requirements. So one of these around the 10% or more. So the school has to provide us with a notification. It's just a clarification of the language to show that they are within those 10% deviation of the budgeted categories. And so the administration still reviews the budgets that are submitted by the school. We receive the initial budget in the fall, or I'm sorry, apologize, for April 30th is when the first budget is due for the following fiscal year. And then we receive a mid-year budget as well that's due in April. I'm sorry, February, apologize.
Okay, but here's my question, I guess, or it's, to me, it, as a layperson, mutually agree upon is a higher standard than provide notice to. And that's a concern to me, given our past practice, not with this particular school. Actually, I have the same question about the following item because it's identical. So maybe we can just clear it up at once and for all. But our experience with Universal, where they're at Webster and Lee, they spent improperly money, and I just would be more comfortable if somebody's going to deviate by 10%, that we approve that versus just be notified by that. That's what I'm getting at. I don't know if it makes sense to others, but that's where I'm coming from.
Mr. Chair?
Administration, could you please answer?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm hoping that I can provide some clarity to the committee relative to Director Peterson's question. One of the things that we've seen in our charter school negotiations is that the board has required that there be more stringent reviews of the financial picture of the schools prior to the end of the school year. When a school is developing its budget, it's budgeting within the varying categories of a school's budget, such as, you know, the human resource component, the operations component, the academic component. What you're reading relative to the 10% deviation is we normally would not have allowed a school to deviate more than 10% in a budget category. So what we've seen in the past is that individuals may have moved funding from one budget line to another line, such as, for example, if a school budgets $870 per year for school supplies, they would need to notify us if they spent more than that $87 and needed to transfer funds. So every time they went over each budget line by 10%, they would be required to seek approval, right? And get the board to mutually agree to that. What is in place right now is actually more stringent. So a school could not transfer money from staffing into travel or by category. The category now would be locked. So actually our finance department is has more controls in place to ensure that funding could not be spent, expenditures could not be spent out of varying budget categories over that 10%. So while they would be able to overspend a budget line by 10%, they would not be able to spend more than a budget category by 10%. I don't know if that makes sense. And Bridget, if you could add to provide any clarity on the discussion with the school.
Yeah.
The administration to further clarify.
Chair Bias, members of the committee, Bridget Shaw, Contracted School Services. So when a school submits their budget, we go through and look for any deviations. And then during their mid-year budget, they provide expenditure and their expenditure report. And that's when the mid-year, where we can look for those 10% deviations. And then we provide feedback and ask the school to then correct any of those mid-year before it gets to the end of the year where the budget is already kind of finalized and revised. So there's constant communication that happens between the charter schools and our office and the Office of Finance to ensure that that 10% deviation is reviewed and looked at and provided an explanation or feedback immediately upon that mid-year budget that we receive. And that's the first time we see it. And then we also will get the final audit report in October, where we can really, which will be like the whole budgeted year to see the final report. Does that help?
Director Peterson, any follow-up?
I'll just say that I still don't quite understand, but I trust the two people who've just spoken that it's more strict and that there's adequate oversight. It's something that we should continue to monitor, of course. I did have one other question, if it's okay, that had to do with academics. May I ask that, Chair Bias?
Yes, please go ahead.
I was just curious. On page 6 and 7, a number of different items were crossed out in terms of the percentages. Well, I won't just a number of items. And then on page 7, there was a new set of items added. At least 50% of students will improve their percentile rate, et cetera, et cetera. I was wondering if there could be, is this a lowering or a increasing of the level of expectations that we're expecting from a school? I have to admit, I couldn't quite understand the distinction between what was cut and what was added. If I could have some explanation, appreciate it.
Administration, please.
Chair Baez, members of the committee, Bridget Shaw, Contracted School Services. So if you look on page, starting with the performance measures, start on page 5. The first items 1, 2, and 3, and if you look at numbers that were before they were renumbered, 6 and 7, those 2 items were just reorganized in the contract and say the same thing but clarified a little bit more for 6 and 7. And since this school in particular doesn't have the little ones, they have testing grade levels. Those are why those were struck out. If you look at the WSAS, those remain in there. Those are the Wisconsin State Assessment System. So they still have to provide us with meet or beat the district. Those are standard measures that are a part of the contract, just language clarified. They do not have high school students, so that is why number 5, which changed to 11, is marked off. Numbers 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are all measures related to local measures. Because MESA is a short-term contract, we wanted to show measures that would demonstrate growth towards attainment of these educational goals. And so those are added measures. It doesn't replace the other measures that are standard, but it adds 2 to show that the school is making progress towards attainment of these goals, especially being a short-term contract, and the testing for this year didn't take place. We wanted to make sure that we had some measurements in there that will demonstrate that growth. It's hard when you have a 2-year contract to demonstrate that, and so this was our way of showing some type of growth from the school. Number 11.
Follow up, Director Peterson.
I would want to thank who put in all the hard work. Who's on the committee that helps? Whoops.
Your mic is muted, Director Peterson. Okay, there you go. Can you hear me now? We can hear you, yes.
Okay, I want to thank the people who put this together. It obviously is a lot of work to make these changes, and what you just laid out about the need for short-term measurements makes sense. Could you just share with the board the names of the people who help put together these contracts? I'm curious, is it just one person or several people?
Administration.
Chair Baez, members of the committee, Bridget Shaw, Contracted School Services. It's a multiple department that works with it in collaboration with the Office of Board Governance, as well as the Office of the City Attorney. So it's just a number of departments that we make sure to collaborate with. I can't name everybody because that would be exhausting, but those are the departments that we do work with. And so, yes, it's a team effort.
Thank you.
Does the Office of Accountability and Efficiency have anything to add here?
Chair Baez, Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. We have no comments on this item. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead. Yes.
You have Director Phillips in the queue, and then Director Simpson, and then Director O'Halloran.
Not seen them. My pardon, my apologies. Director Phillips.
Thank you, Chair Baez. Question that I had, I'm pausing because I also heard the echo. I'm muted. Better? Okay. All right. So great. With obviously none of us could have anticipated what we're currently enduring with the public health crisis. I'm interested more broadly in what supports our contracted services providing to schools that are chartered under MPS in terms of making sure that they can adapt their educational model should they need to this fall.
Administration.
Chair Bias, members of the committee, Bridget Shack, Contracted School Services. So all of our charter and partnership schools have continued through this difficult time, and all have efforts to make sure that they're working with students and families to provide a continuation of the distance learning based off of their school programming. So computers, and they use Google Classroom. They've been making just wellness checks and checking in on students. They've also been sharing our meal sites with students and families, and that has been very beneficial for our families. And so their effort has been really good with keeping the learning going as best as possible.
Chair Baez and members of the committee, also to add anything that we offer to any school in the district, they are able to take a part in that as well. Professional development, whatever that may be, it's open to all 159 of our schools.
Thank you. Any follow-up question, Director Phillips?
Yes, thank you. So in terms of having distance learning and equipment, are our charter schools receiving equipment from MPS as part of continued distance learning? And then do we have data on how many students they've been in contact with during the official school closure? So, and is that so that's two questions. One, how is the district providing, if they are, equipment for some of these schools to continue distance learning, or is that an expectation that we have for the individual school? My second question is, do we have information on how much of their student population they've been in contact with during the school closure through the state? And then lastly, are we considering any sort of touch point metric going into next year or further, which I think is implicit into these contracts, but that would state, should there be another school closure, we expect that you are in contact with 90%, 95%, whatever percentage would be reasonable of your student population, whether or not they're able to physically attend your school.
Administration.
Chair Bias, members of the committee, Bridget Shaw, Contracted School Services. So our schools have been able to provide that technology to their families. And then as a contracted school, they've really adjusted their programming to meet those needs. And so if we would, depending on what would happen, their educational program would continue. It might just look more virtual and distance learning like our non-contracted schools would. And as far as contact with families, from my communication with them, and I can get you the exact data if you would like, but I would say almost 95% of them have been able to connect with their families in some means, phone calls, and that's from the beginning when this all happened until currently till today. So there's constant connections with the families and providing them with the information and the learning materials needed to continue.
Director Phillip, any follow-up?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if my last question was answered. Is it worthwhile or a consideration that we have to explicitly state in a contract what percentage of our student population we expect for people to be in contact with, whether or not they're attending school physically? And this might be similar to Director O'Halloran. This is my first time sitting on this committee, and this might actually be explicit within our MPS handbook. So if anyone could provide me with that information, I'd be grateful.
Administration.
Chair Bias, members of the committee, Bridget Shaw, Contracted School Services. They have a contract. Their contract with us is for them to continue, whether It's the face-to-face in a typical school setting or distance, but that's a continuation of services as educational entity. They have payments that they have to meet. They have attendance goals that they meet. And so those are all things that would continue even in a time like these.
Thank you. I
Director
don't
Phillips.
I have follow-up. Thank you.
Director O'Halloran was next on the.
Chair Baez, before we move on to Director O'Halloran, it appears that the feedback that's happening is unfortunately on your end. So technology is suggesting that when you are done talking, immediately mute yourself, and that should help eliminate some of that bounce back that we're hearing. Thank you.
Director O'Halloran.
Okay, thank you, Chair Baez. This is a question that would go through for all of the contracts we're looking at tonight. On page 17, it looks like we're removing language about the charter school shall obtain MPS approval for any facility modification, major repairs, and et cetera. I won't read the whole thing. Is it being removed from these contracts because it's not applicable to these situations? Or is this a modification that's going to be made to the template going forward?
Administration.
Chair Baez, members of the committee, Bridget Shaw, Contracted School Services. This would be a modification that would go forward for all of the contracts moving forward.
Thank you for that answer.
Follow up.
Yes. Can you speak to why this was removed from the template going forward, please?
Administration.
Chair Baez, members of the committee, Bridget Shaw, Contracted School Services. So when we were working on the contract and making these modifications, one of the things was that it was a little redundant of before. So the schools have the right and their own, many of them have their own facility so that they wouldn't need permission necessarily. And then there's always the AHERA inspection. But then also those that are in an MPS facility would naturally, based off of their facilities lease, would lend itself to asking for permission.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Director O'Halloran, any follow-up?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Members of the committee, the information is actually just removed from this section of the contract and would be explicitly stated within the facilities contract. So it is not something that is going away. It is actually being placed in its appropriate section of the contract.
Thank you. Any other comments by board members? Director Simpson, I'm sorry, you were on the queue.
That's quite all right. Yes, I just had a question back to one of the academic measurements where for math and reading, it talked about students, 50% of the students will improve their percentile rank on the universal screener from winter to spring by 2%. 2 percentiles. That was for math and reading. I'm looking at page 7, and I just was wondering like where those numbers came from, where the 50% or the 2 percentile points came from. Like why were those numbers chosen?
Administration.
As members of the committee, Bridget Shaw, Contracted School Services. So we worked with assessment to come up with something that was normative, that would show growth in this short amount of time, and also be able to show and demonstrate something that was not too stretched of a goal, but also something that would be rigorous enough for schools to be able to meet. So that's why those numbers were chosen, as we looked at some normative data. What is it that students typically grow? And that's where those percentages came from.
Follow up, Director Simpson.
No, not at this time.
Thank you. Do we have comments by the public on this item?
Mr. Chair, we have no public testimony on this item.
So what is the pleasure of the committee? Can I have a motion, please?
Director Peterson is raising his hand.
Director,
I move that we accept the administration recommendation.
is there any further discussion on this item? Then will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Peterson's motion to approve the administration's recommendation to approve the non-instrumentality charter school contract with the Milwaukee Teachers Education Center, MTech, for Milwaukee Environmental Sciences Academy to begin with the 2020-21 school year. Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Peterson.
Aye.
Director Phillips.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Baez.
Aye.
That's five ayes. The motion passes.
Please.
Item three is action on a request to approve the non-instrumentality charter school contract with the Mother Catherine Daniels Conference Center, Inc. for the Catherine T. Daniels University Preparatory Academy, KT Daniels. The recommendation is that the board approve the attached non-instrumentality charter school contract to begin with the 2020-21 school year and to end on the last day of the regularly scheduled year of the 2020-21 school year.
Administration, please. Do you have any comments? Does the administration have any comments? Yes, go ahead.
We are asking for your approval for a one-year contract with Mother Catherine Daniels Conference Center for Catherine T. Daniels University Preparatory Academy for the 2020-21 school year. We are prepared to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item.
Do committee members have any comments? No comments from committee members? But we will proceed then. Does the Office of Accountability and Efficiency have any comments about this item?
Chair Baez, Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. I think maybe just as a quick recap, especially for those new members on this committee, when the Charter School Review Committee had brought this item forward in front of this committee last time, it was noted that the charter school did not meet their financial performance measures. The committee at that time asked the OAE to conduct a review. That review produced findings that were shared with the administration in a sit-down meeting with Dr. Posley and his team, and communicated via a memo to the board. The administration, in response to that, also provided a memo communicating, and I'm paraphrasing, but I don't believe it's a mischaracterization, that they would address these findings in the contract negotiation process. The board, having received both those communications, decided to move forward. At that point, this office generally considered the matter closed, but certainly we stand ready to answer any additional questions on the matter at this time.
Thank you for your comments. Does the administration have anything to add on this point?
Chair Baez, members of the committee, Bridget Shaw, Contracted School Services. So we received, since the last full board meeting on February 27th, we've received their mid-year budget, and it's been reviewed. And based on that review, there are no financial concerns as of right now, as well as we received their fiscal year 21 budget, which is attached to this item, and there are no financial concerns either at this time. In October, we will receive their audit at the end of each fiscal year. We receive their audit 4 months after fiscal year ends, which will be the audited financial statements for fiscal year 20. And at that time, we will be providing that report in collaboration with the Office of Department of Audit Services, as well as Office of Accountability and Efficiency for review. Since this is a one-year contract renewal, we will take it forward with that into consideration for review when we take it in our regular renewal cycle in January, where we do the full review of the charter school contract with the other contractual information included in there as well.
Thank you, Ms. Chuck. Do we have any public comments on this item?
Mr. Chair, we have no speaker slips on this item.
Can I get a motion on this item, please?
Hi, I was in the queue. This is Director Phillips.
Go ahead, Director Phillip. I didn't see you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just had a similar question. What has the continuation of education looked like for this school since the statewide school closures, in terms of what it's looked like and then how contact rates have been?
Administration?
Services. So it looks similar to what I expressed earlier. They've made their contact with the students, been able to contact most of their students. I would say a vast majority of them, and then they're continuing providing some distant learning opportunities, as well as some like handout or packets for those that might need that as well.
Any other comments by any chance? I do have a comment. I wanted to just say that you all know where I stand regarding this particular contract. And I have not changed my mind regarding this matter. And so I will vote appropriately. So can we have a motion on the floor? No. Can we get a motion on the floor?
Director Peterson is waving.
Yeah, I saw him.
Okay.
I said Director Peterson, call him.
I move that we approve the administration recommendation on the one-year contract.
Is there any further discussion on this matter? Can we call the a roll call, please?
On Director Peterson's motion to approve the administration's recommendation for a non-instrumentality charter school contract with the Mother Catherine Daniels Conference Center, Inc. for Catherine T. Daniels for the 2020-2021 school year. Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Peterson.
Aye.
Director Phillips.
I abstain.
Director Seamson.
Aye.
Chair Baez. Chair Baez, your mic is muted.
I abstain.
We have 3 ayes, 2 abstentions. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 4 is action on a request to approve the non-instrumentality charter school contract with Highland Community School, Inc. for Highland Community School to begin with the 2020-21 school year. The administration recommends that the board approve the attached contract beginning with the 2021 school year and end on the last regularly scheduled day of the 2024-2025 school year.
Does the administration have any comments?
Chair Baez and members of the committee, we're asking for your approval of a 5-year non-instrumentality charter contract with Highland Community School that is before you. The contract attachment schedules that the school will start this contract beginning the 2021 school year, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have in regards to this item.
Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask questions? I'm seeing none. Does the Office of Accountability and Efficiency have anything to add?
Chair Baez, Matt Chase, and OAE, we have no comments. Thank you.
Madam Chair, have we received any public comment on this item?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have received one letter of support for Highland, the Highland Charter School contract, and that is from a Miss Sherlyn Moore.
Thank you.
We also have Director Phillips in the queue.
Director Phillips.
Thank you. And it's just the same question. And if we just have a feeling that, like what has educational continuity looked like during this time? And if there's no specific information around contact rates or anything else, I guess there's no real reason to ask it, but I'm wondering if that's something that we're going to have a better definition around coming to the fall for all of our contracts, because if that's something that we're thinking about in general.
Administration.
Chair Baez, members of the committee, Bridget Check, Contracted School Services. There's no new information to provide. Highland, as a Montessori school, had to, has continued to try to find things that are more virtual, as Montessori education is very textile. So they're working on providing a continuation of educational services to their students, and they've been in touch with probably over 95% of their families. Yeah.
Chair Baez and members of the committee, one of the things that we're doing when we are looking at our contingency plan is that's one of the things that we're going to do looking at for all schools. So that is something that we will be bringing forward in the near future, and we will be asking all of our schools to be able to provide that when on an as-needed basis.
Thank you. What is the pleasure of the committee?
I'll move approval of the contract.
Mr. Chair, I have captured Director Phillips's motion, but we do have Directors O'Halloran and Peterson in the queue.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
And then Director Simpson. I'm sorry.
Director Peterson goes first. Yes.
I'll pass. I was going to make a motion.
Who is next on the queue? I'm sorry.
That would be Director O'Halloran and then Director Simpson.
Okay, Director O'Halloran, please.
I also was going to make a motion, but I will pass with the comment that with all of the three that we just talked about, to go back to your comment at the beginning of this conversation about all of the charter schools, Director Baez, I look forward to having, I think we at one point had discussed having a work session or some sort of retreat about how we approach charter schools. And I look forward to that discussion, and I really hope that happens. I recognize we're currently working on the budget, so we have our arms full, but I would look forward to that conversation sooner than later, if possible.
Thank you, Director O'Halloran. Director Simpson?
I actually was going to say pretty much what Director O'Halloran just said. I just, before we left the charter school discussion, I wanted to make sure that, we just kind of repeated how important it is for us to come together as a body to have that important conversation. So just wanted to kind of get back to that before we closed out this conversation.
Absolutely, Director Simpson. Thank you. And thank you, Director O'Halloran. Well, we still need a motion. Who's going to make the motion?
Mr. Chair, Director Phillips has made a motion to approve the administration's recommendation.
Can we call the question then? Can we call the roll?
On Director Phillips' motion to approve the administration's recommendation for a non-instrumentality charter school contract with Highland Community School, Inc. for the 2020-21 school year. Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Peterson.
Aye.
Director Phillips.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Chair Baez.
Aye.
That's five ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 5 is action on a request to approve submission of the simplification for consolidating Head Start grants application. The recommendation is that the board approve the submission of the 2020-21 Head Start simplification application.
Does the administration wish to make comments for this?
Yes. Chair Baez and members of the committee, we're requesting your approval for the submission of the 2020-21 Head Start simplification application. This will allow the administration to consolidate the federal and county Head Start grant to totaling $10.6 million. At this time, we'll ask Joanne D. Williams to provide some additional information, and then after which we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Joanne D.
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Good evening, Chair Baez and members of the committee. I am Joan D. Williams, Early Childhood Learning Manager. Tonight, I'm here to present several applications on behalf of the Head Start program for board approval. The following applications are the Simplification for Consolidating Head Start Grants application, Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Cares Act funding application, and then funding and the federal and county cost of living adjustment, COLA, and quality improvement funding application. As I review each grant, I would like to acknowledge that while working remotely, the Head Start administrative team, supervisor, manager, and Policy Council Board Liaison Director Simpson and Policy Council worked successfully to complete and approve all of these applications to meet the May 15th deadline. To begin, the Simplification for Consolidating Grants application will allow the Head Start program to merge two grants, as Dr. Posley stated. We will serve over 1,500 students at 27 federal and 8 county sites into one. The Head Start program is seeking to consolidate these two grants totaling $10.5 million. The Office of Head Start from the Administration of Children and Families recognized that there are a number of grantees with multiple grants and created this application. Upon learning of this opportunity and discussions with the program specialist, it was highly encouraged for MPS to pursue this consolidation. The consolidation will allow MPS to streamline administrative requirements, track costs more efficiently, reduce reporting, revisions, amendments, and audits for more than one grant, plan and operate multiple Head Start programs more efficiently and cohesively, prepare one grant application reflecting all needs, goals, services, and options, submit one annual program information reporting, also known as a PIR, and spend less time tracking staff time. At this time, I'm able to answer any questions that you may have about the Simplification for Consolidation Grants application.
The committee members have any questions of the administration on this item? No questions by committee members? Any comments by the Office of Accountability and Efficiency?
Mr. Chair, you do have Directors Simpson, O'Halloran, and Woodward in the queue.
Okay. Director Simpson, please.
So mine wasn't a question, but just I wanted to thank the team for the work that they did on actually those 3 items, 5, 6, and 7, and also just how they reached out to families to have a virtual meeting where we just really went through these 3 items with detail and clarity and care for the families and students that we serve. So I just wanted to compliment the team on the work that they did.
Thank you, Director Simpson. Madam Chair, who's next on the queue?
You have Director O'Halloran and then Director Woodward.
Please.
I think that might have been a misunderstanding. I actually don't have any comments or questions at this time. So I'll just reiterate Director Simpson's gratitude for all the hard work on this application and then also all the outreach with our families in this important work. So thank you.
Director Woodward.
Is to be combined with the county, the funding for the county or the city? The money that's going to be.
Administration, would you respond to that, please?
Chair Bias and members of the committee, the funding that's going to be consolidated are the federal funds. So we have 1370 seats that we're combining to the 136 seat grant that we received last year. Both of these funds are coming from federal funds.
And so is it just for MPS, or is there somebody jointly included with these funds from the federal?
Again, this is Joanne Williams, Early Childhood Learning Manager. This is just, and I'm sorry, Director, Chair Bias and members of the committee, this is just MPS. We're
Just
consolidating.
MPS.
Yes.
And the federal funds coming directly to MPS, and that's it. Nobody else is involved in.
Yes, Director Woodward.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on this?
Mr. Chair, we have no public testimony received on this item.
On this item, please? Can I get a motion on this item, please?
You have Director Simpson raising her hand.
That we accept this item. Sorry, getting that feedback. I just move that we accept administration's recommendation.
Any comment on the motion? Call the roll, please, Secretary.
On Director Simpson's motion to approve the administration's recommendation for submission of the simplification for consolidation Head Start grant application. Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Peterson.
Aye.
Director Phillips.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Chair Baez. Your mic is muted.
Aye. Okay.
That is five ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 6 is action on the request to approve submission of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act funding application. The recommendation is that the board approve the submission of the CARES Act funding application as submitted in the attachments to this item.
Administration, any comments?
The second Head Start item on our agenda this evening pertains to the Milwaukee Public Schools Head Start program seeking funds in the amount of $155,578 for supplementing summer programs. Funding for such program is made available through the CARES Act. At this time, I will ask Joanne Williams to provide some additional information. Joanne?
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Good evening again, Chair Bias and members of the committee. The second grant application is the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act funding application. As Dr. Posley mentioned, this is an application seeking for funding of $155,000 with $578. The CARES Act has made approximately $250 million available to grants to Head Start grantees for one-time activities in response to COVID-19 for children that are 3 years and older to address the instructional time loss as a result of the pandemic. The CARES Act funding will provide one-time funding in summer of 2020. It will target K3 and K4 students with IEPs and K4 students entering K5 in the fall. Also, the CARES Act funding is a face-to-face learning, will fund for face-to-face learning opportunity for students that will be held 3 days a week at the following sites: Bethune, Congress, Milwaukee Academy of Chinese Language, Longfellow, which is a bilingual site, Dorfler, another bilingual site, and Grant Gordon. It is aligned with MPS Summer School Program and sites starting July 6th through July 31st from 7:30 a.m. until 11:30 a.m. Also, after-school programming will be offered, such as wraparound services, as CLC and campsites will be available, with the exception of Milwaukee Academy of Chinese Language. There will also be an opportunity for make, take, and teach activities for parents, where there will be 1-hour sessions per day with activities aligned to the Wisconsin Model Early Learning Standards, WEMOS, and also the Head Start Early Learning Outcome Framework, HESLOF, that we follow in our program.
Do committee members want to ask questions or comments? Director Haller.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have an idea of what the timeline is for approval for this grant, or when we would hear back?
Administration.
Director Bias and members of the committee, we should be hearing back upon submission within a 1 to 2 week turnaround to let us know what that looks like.
And follow up?
Yes, go ahead, Fab.
So if I know that we are still trying to determine what summer is going to look like and fall is going to look like. Is there any plan for the funds if in-person instruction can't take place, or are we still able to use that grant?
Again, Joanne Williams, Early Childhood Learning Manager, Director Bias, and members of the committee. Per the legislation, this is a funding for face-to-face learning. At this time, that's what we have been communicated, and that's how the application will be submitted. So the answer to your question, it is just for face-to-face learning.
Follow up?
Not at this time.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
You do have Director Phillips in the queue.
Director Phillips?
And then Woodward.
And then Director Woodward. Okay, Director Phillips, please.
Thank you, Chair Bias. I wanted to echo what Dr. O'Halloran and Dr. Simpson said in the last item. In terms of this item, taking the time, I know there's a lot of things going on, thinking about how we could provide Head Start this summer. I guess I'm less familiar with the program. So in general, what is the limit in terms of classroom size for these summer programs?
Administration. Administration, go ahead.
Joanne, you're
Thank you, sorry. Joanne Williams, Early Childhood Manager. Chair Bias and members of the committee, the class size for this program would be up to 20 students in a classroom.
Any follow-up?
No, I appreciate that we've putting this forward and understand that when there are grant limitations, we have to go with what they're asking, which is face-to-face. And I trust that the administration will continue to work with our public health officials in determining what makes sense for all of our families. So thank you again for putting this together. And I'm in support of the item.
Director Woodward, was on the queue.
Yes, my question is, in the past, have we supported K-3 students? I mean, did we get funding for the K-3 student? Or will this be the first time be getting funding for them? And will all K-3 schools, kids be part of this grant, or just the 4 schools you named?
Administration.
Joanne Williams, Early Childhood Learning Manager, Chair Bias and members of the committee. Your first question, this is the first time that we are receiving summer funding for the program, and the sites that we selected were based upon where summer school sites would be held to be able to have our students in the Head Start program to attend.
I meant at one time, K-3 students weren't getting any funds. Am I correct? They were not getting funds.
Start money, so I understand this is different from administration. Can you explain that, please?
Joanne Williams, Early Childhood Learning Manager, Chair Bias and members of the committee. To my understanding, this monies are for Head Start students that are in K3 that have IEPs and
Let
students.
me hit it then. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I didn't hear that IEP before. Okay, so. Okay.
Thank you. Any follow-up on that? Okay. If that, do we have any comments from OEA on this?
Chair Bias, Matt Chase, and OAE. We have no comments. Thank you.
Have we received any public comment on this item?
Mr. Chair, we have no public testimony on this item.
So what is the pleasure of the committee? What is the pleasure of the committee?
You had your hand raised by Director Peterson.
I move the administration recommendation.
So we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion on the motion? If not, Secretary, will you please call the roll?
On Director Peterson's motion to approve submission of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, the CARES Act funding application. Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Peterson. Director Peterson.
Aye.
Director Phillips.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Chair Bias.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item 7 is action on a request to approve submission of the Head Start federal and county cost of living adjustment, COLA, and the quality improvement funding application. The recommendation is that the board approve the submission of the 2020-21 Head Start applications.
Does the administration wish to make any comments?
Members of the committee, we are asking for your approval of the Head Start federal, county, and cost of living adjustment that are known as COLA for the quality improvement funding application. I'm going to ask Joanne Williams at this time to provide some additional information. Joanne.
Thank you again, Dr. Posley. Good evening, Chair Bias and members of the committee. I am Joanne Williams, and I am the Early Childhood Learning Manager. The final grant application that we're putting forth tonight is a federal and county cost of living adjustment, which is COLA, and quality improvement funding application. We are seeking to obtain $208,646 in COLA and $419,420 in quality improvement. The further Consolidated Appropriations Act 2020 contains an increase of approximately $550 million for programs under the Head Start Act for fiscal year 2020. The increase provides $193 million for cost of living adjustments and $250 million for quality improvement funding investments for Head Start. The COLA funding allows for permanent raises of no less than 2% awarded in the 2020-21 school year, increases to fringe benefit rates for the last school year, and increases in the operational costs in the last school year. The annual COLA raises are automatically added to staff salaries at the start of the fiscal year through human resources and payroll. The steps and lanes increases that occurred throughout this past year and future years are administered through HR processes as well. The quality improvement funding is a permanent increase for the Head Start program. Programmatic efforts and activities will help better incorporate a trauma-informed approach that will support children, families, and staff. The Head Start program is seeking to increase family partnership associates. This grant will allow us to hire additional family partnership associates, FPAs, to help the caseloads become more manageable and allow the program to strengthen family services and relationships. The FPAs will be able to provide more individualized family support. Additional FPAs will also help to decrease the wait time for during the enrollment process. In addition, we're looking to provide extra hours. The additional staffing hours will strengthen families enhance the relationships, expedite registration, recruit families, and provide professional development and training focused on trauma-informed care for Head Start staff and families. The additional hours will also assist during peak registration times and MPS district-wide recruitment and enrollment events. We're also seeking to provide consultants with trauma-informed practices and social-emotional learning. Consultants will provide additional training to program staff to better understand trauma, the possible corresponding triggers, how to respond, and implementation strategies in the classroom to support students and families in a trauma-sensitive manner. Also, we will include additional resources to reinforce the calming areas referred to as safe places that are part of the board-adopted Froxtree curriculum in our classrooms. Other additional supplies, funding will be provided to each site to create calming spaces for students to use. In addition, funds are budgeted to support programming costs such as duplicating and office supplies. At this time, I'm able to answer any questions you may have regarding the federal and county cost of living adjustment COLA and quality improvement funding application.
Mr. Chair.
Do committee members wish to make any comments or ask questions? Or Secretary, do you want to make any comments?
Mr. Chair, no, we have Director Phillips in the queue.
Director Phillips.
Yes, I just wanted to move approval of the administration's recommendation and grateful for all the work that went into putting together this grant.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have any other members of the board that wish to comment? Or
You have Director Woodward in the queue.
Would you please?
Muted. Okay, I have a question on page 1, item page 1, paragraph. A statement that says all MPS Head Start teachers are licensed through Wisconsin. No, it's the next line where it's talking about instructional or highly qualified and about no child left behind. I mean, how does that fit in today? Because we're supposed to be on, I think, all students succeed at, and we're no longer under no child left behind. And I wanted to know, how did that apply since we're no longer under no child left behind in this statement you have here at the bottom?
Administration.
Joanne Williams, Early Child Learning Manager, Chair Bias and members of the committee. Can you please repeat that page number that you're referring to?
Okay, on the first, you have the whole thing, the first page, first of 6 pages. And when you get down to the last paragraph, there's a statement. Instructions are highly qualified under ESEA, reconstituted for no child left behind. I just wanted you to explain the meaning of that. I wanted to understand that.
Administration.
Huh? That is Chair Bias and members of the committee. It's just basically stating it's ESEA now. It is just reconstituted. It used to be called No Child Left Behind.
That's what it's saying that it was
Right.
called. That's saying
Right.
it was called. I understood that you were applying it to now. There was one other question I had. I think that was one. I think that was the one I had read. I didn't understand it when I read it. So
It's
thank
the
you.
new language.
What?
It's just the new language, new verbiage. Yes.
Madam Secretary.
Mr. Chair. I didn't see anyone else in the speaker queue, and we do not have any public testimony on this item. I'm sorry, sir, your mic is muted.
I'm sorry, do we have a motion? We have a motion on this item.
Mr. Chair, we do have Director Phillips who moved approval of the administration's recommendation.
Can we call the roll, please?
On Director Phillips' motion to approve the submission of the Head Start federal and county cost of living adjustment, COLA, and the quality improvement funding application. On the motion is read into the record, Director O'Halloran,
Aye.
Director Peterson,
Aye.
Director Phillips,
Aye.
Director Simpson,
Aye.
Chair Baez.
Aye.
That's five ayes. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, any other item, please?
Mr. Chair, that was the last item on this meeting's agenda.
There'll be no further business before the committee. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much to all of you for participating in this evening tonight.
Thank you.